Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? You're all not doing half as well as me. You want to know why? Because I'm about to share my story with you, and I believe by the time we're done, there will be something, a kernel, a nugget, that you will actually be able to take from that story and apply to your journey. So I'm excited. And I was going to open up the whole thing by saying, I haven't always been a successful leader at a Fortune 100 company. I am today, and I did it at Humana. That qualified me to be one of the speakers for this series because there was an overwhelming request from many of you that said, can we hear from someone that has done this at Humana? And not just what they did, but how they did it. So I really took some time to think about, that's a tall order. How can I explain the hows? And I borrowed a theme from a good friend of mine. You might know her, Bonnie St. John. Thanks, Bonnie. She had this concept once where she related climbing the corporate ladder to climbing a mountain. And I said, that's the framework I'm going to use. So I'm going to talk to you today about 3 things that I think have made a difference for me in my ascension on Mount Humana. And the first is, we carry backpacks. And knowing what is in that backpack is the first thing you have to do to be able to manipulate it, adjust it, change it, and deal with it. The second thing is, there are moments that occur in our lives, and they feed us inspiration. And some are big and some are small. But those defining moments are tools that allow you to carry the backpack up the mountain. You need to know what they are and how to draw on them to help you when times are tough. And the third thing I'm going to talk about is how do we manage the backpack. And everyone in the room can see I'm actually wearing a backpack. For everyone on the phone, I'm wearing a backpack. The third thing is, how do we manage the backpack? And I think there are 3 things that I have done in my 26 years. And the first is brute strength. Just being strong enough to carry the backpack to the next summit on the mountain. And the second is really figuring out how to leverage the fact that no one can climb this mountain alone. None of us. You need help. You need Sherpas, and you need teammates that can help you carry the backpack when there are times that you can't. And the third thing I'm going to talk about is the one I'm most excited about. There are ways to lighten the backpack. Take some of the weight out and make the journey up the mountain a little better and a little easier. So that's my context for today. So I guess I have to start out with the first one, which is what's in my backpack. I will tell you that I think there are some things that are in all of our backpacks. It comes with being a woman who works. And some of those things that are in our backpacks are just the fundamental facts. And study after study will tell you that men are acknowledged and promoted on potential, and women are acknowledged and promoted on accomplishments. It's not a discussion to have, an argument to have. It's the way that it is. We have to prove ourselves to gain credibility. It's been proven again and again and again. It's in my backpack, and it's in every one of your backpacks. We carry in our backpack the fundamental fact that you can take the exact same resume and put a man's name on top of it, and people call him accomplished. And you put a female name on top of the same resume, and the adjectives change. Now that's, boy, she's pretty aggressive. Those are biases. Those are things that exist in the world today, and we have to deal with it. It's in our backpack. All of us. We carry that around. It is in our backpack that many of us, we are walking in the door at work, sacrificing something. Our children are being taken care of by somebody else. Dishes are left in the sink. There is something we didn't get done when we walked in the door. That backpack is heavier before we do anything. Just walking in the door, we have a heavier backpack. So there's a lot of good things in the backpack too. I'll bet you there's not a single person in here that has not had a profile test, a StrengthsFinder test, a Myers-Briggs test. Come on, every one of us has at least done one of them. And what does that test tell you? It tells you who you are. It tells you what your strengths are. It tells you what your tendencies are. You know what? That's in your backpack too. Those are your carabiners and your ropes. Those are the things, those positive things, knowing who you are and what you can do. You use those. You use them to get up the mountain carrying this big backpack. So when I thought about sharing with you some of the personal things that are in my backpack, because some of those common things that we all carry. But there are personal things. There are things we put in the backpack ourselves. There are things we let others put in the backpack. And I'll tell you personally, for me, I carry some really positive things in my backpack, but I also carry some difficult things. I have been told 1,000,000 times in my career I was too aggressive, not aggressive enough. I was too upfront, too frank, not really clear enough. I can tell you repeatedly that based on my behavior and how I talked and how I worked in an environment, people came to conclusions about who I was, what I could do, and what I was like. Those are in my backpack. And there are really good things in my backpack because there are people along the way that tell you really good things about who you are. And I'll tell you that one of the most important things that is in my backpack was given to me when I was 15. When I was 15 years old, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. We were told he had about 10 to 12 months to live. There was nothing they could do. It was advanced. He had lung cancer. There wasn't much we could do. And you know, it's funny. Things have really changed because in those days, we didn't talk about it. The diagnosis came, and then the parents went and dealt with it, and the children were supposed to go on their life the way they were. It was very strange. I can't imagine a family now not talking about what that means. We didn't talk about it. 4 months after the diagnosis, I was stood up. I was 15 years old, and it was a Friday night, and a boy was supposed to pick me up and take me to the movies. And he never showed, never called. I was devastated. I was in my room crying, and I hear my dad calling me into his room, and I go into his room, and I sit down on the bed, and he says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Some stupid boy stood me up." By the way, his name was Timmy Turner. I'm not bitter. Just saying. Stupid boy stood me up. And, you know, I was a tomboy. I didn't play girl sports for a long, long, long time. I didn't recognize that boys were anything other than something to compete with until I was about 14. So this was new territory for me. I was really upset by it, and I said, you know what? I don't think any boy's ever going to like me. I was devastated. And my dad reached over and he grabbed my hand and he said, "Marsden, I'm going to tell you something. You are special. Do not let any boy or anyone ever tell you that you are not. You are really special. I want you to know that has been in my backpack since I was 15. I have called on it more times than I ever could have imagined." So I will tell you, it takes work to sit down and think about what's in your backpack. I didn't always believe it, but there were times when I doubted it, that I could go back and say, maybe I am special. So I will tell you, the first most important thing to ascend Mount Humana is to know what's in your backpack, the good and the bad, because both of them are a part of your journey. And figuring out how to manage the bad and leverage the good is a part of the success. Defining moments. When I looked back and I said, what could I share with someone that would tell them was a difference for me in my ascension up the Mount Humana journey? And I will tell you that I kept coming back to these certain things, and they were truly defining moments. They were moments that changed what I thought my purpose was, who I was, why I was here, why I was doing. You know, this is not easy. We come to work every day with this backpack and we climb that mountain. We do it in heels and sometimes in skirts. This is hard. And I kept saying to myself, what is it that makes me keep coming back for more, even when it doesn't go well? And I believe that it's defining moments. And knowing what your defining moments are can make a difference. I'm going to share with you 4 of mine. So, my first one relates back to my dad. You know, you lose your dad at a young age, it has an impact. What I didn't tell you was, my dad was a doctor. My mom was his nurse and receptionist. The office was attached to the house. And at least one day per week, some form of our dinner was a patient's payment for service. It was the first time I ever had cottage cheese and lasagna. It was interesting. But that was my dad. That was the kind of doctor that he was. And when he got diagnosed, he didn't feel it was morally right to sell a practice. How do you sell a practice? It's your relationships. These are your patients you've been taking care of forever. So he didn't. I watched my mom lose her husband, her best friend, and the only employer she ever had. She'd never interviewed. Nothing. And then I watched her, week after week after week, just try to get someone to give her an interview. People that she thought would say, oh, come on, we'll give you an interview. They were not the ones saying, hey, let's give you an interview. 6 months went by. 7 months went by. My mom took the first job offer she got. It was a part-time school nurse for a local elementary school, making $4,900 a year. We literally went from being the daughters of Dr. Connolly to being eligible for the free school lunch program in the same year. It was a pretty traumatic event, defining moment for me. I knew in that moment, no matter what, I was never going to be in a situation where I was dependent upon someone else for my own financial security or my children's. Defining moment. It actually drove me to make choices, make decisions. But I knew what was driving me. I leveraged it when I needed to. And let me tell you, I have 3 sisters. They all lost their father too. Not one of them had the same reaction to it that I did. So defining moments, there is no one. There's no one defining moment that if someone to say, oh, if that happened to me, I'd have this great. Defining moments are personal, and they can be big and they can be small. I will tell you my second defining moment. And I've told this story a couple times. I've never told it for an audience quite this large, so bear with me as I go through this. But it really was a defining moment for me. I was working for Employers Health Insurance, which is a company Humana acquired. I had relocated twice already for a promotion, moved my family with me. And we had gotten a call one day from the president of the company that said, mandatory phone call. Everybody's got to get on this call. We need to talk to you about something really important. Decision has been made. And I still remember, it was like 7 o'clock at night. And at 8 o'clock, we were all still sitting on hold. But we could talk to each other over the hold music. So, I mean, we're all like, what do you think's happening? I don't know. I heard about this. It was pretty intense. And then the president gets on the phone, and he says, I just want to let you know that we have just signed an agreement for Humana to acquire us. So I have to tell you, my first reaction was, this is great. I had limited products. I was in the D.C. market, but I had Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. I only had PPOs. I didn't have an HMO. I was really limited. I thought this was great news. I was actually excited about it. I was the only one going, woohoo, Humana. Yeah, well, then 6 months later, the heads of the joint new division, I get another phone call. We want to let you know, the Humana HMO in Washington, D.C. was losing millions of dollars a month. And there's nothing that the Employers Health small group business was going to be able to offset that loss. We're shutting down the entire region. I not only was having my entire region shut down, I had to now go find jobs for my 22 associates that worked for me, and I had to figure out what I was going to do. I was out of a job, they were out of a job, shut down the office. It's a really difficult thing to do. And in that process, I got a phone call and they said, hey, there is this sales leadership position available in Humana's Orlando market office, and they want you to come interview. I'm like, Orlando? I could do that. So I fly to Orlando, and I walk into this interview, and it's the market president and a senior leader at Humana at the time. And we sit down, and it was a pretty impressive resume. Continued growth. I had gone from, 3 locations, significant promotions each time. I was managing a very large budget, a very large region. I was feeling pretty good walking into this interview. So I'm reviewing my resume, going over my experience. And at one point, the market president says, well, what do you want to do? What do you want out of this specific interview? What would you want to do at Humana? And I said, I want to be a market president. I have a lot of experience. I think I've shown I can manage a large organization in a complex environment. That's my career goal. And they both kind of looked at each other, and they grinned a little bit, and then they leaned in and said, we're just going to be really honest with you. And I'm like, inside scoop. This is good. This is my new company. I'm going to find out what's going on. This is good. Yeah, well, they leaned in. And they said, we're just going to do you a favor, and we're going to let you know you're not market president material. I said, market president material? What? Are you kidding? You're not market president material. We're just telling you the truth. Women don't lead markets. It's just not the way that it works. But you do look good. You come across well. We think with your looks and your personality, you could be a really good sales rep. We'd hire you as a sales rep, but you're just not market president material. I was so overwhelmed. I'm actually having the exact same physiological reaction right now as I had in that moment. I knew sexism existed. It had never been so in your face. You're not even qualified. We're not even, and they thought they were doing me a favor. They were letting me know this is the lay of the land. This is not an opportunity for you. I was overwhelmed, which is rare for me to be speechless. I was speechless. I cannot even tell you the rest of the interview. I cannot tell you what happened in the rest of the interview. And it was actually much worse. I'm only giving you enough of a taste to get the sense of it. But I got into a cab, and I was driving to the airport to fly home. And I called my mentor. And I said, I have to tell you what just happened. This is the company that just acquired us? My God, what are we going to do? And he said, if you want to file a complaint, I will back you 100%. We can file a complaint. We can get it out. And I'm like, I'm the acquiree. I'm not in a position of influence. Is that how I want my first relationship with Humana to be? I'm going to file a complaint? And then my mentor said, or you could prove him wrong. And I will tell you that I've spent the last 17 years proving him wrong. Proving them wrong. So I will let you know, neither one of them are with the company and haven't been for quite some time. And my scope and scale and accountability is much broader than a market president. So I proved him wrong. But let me tell you, defining moment. It drove me to do things and make sacrifices and make commitments I would not have done because I was driven by that. It drove me. You all have defining moments, and they may not be that blatant or that big, but you have them. And I'll tell you, my third defining moment, which is it's a big one, I will admit. But I will tell you that I know people that have similar ones, not as big, but have had the same impact. And my third defining moment that keeps me carrying this backpack day in and day out and coming back, I will tell you, many of you know this, some of you may not, but I was with the Humana Group in New York on 9/11. We had the last dinner served in the Windows of the World restaurant. And there are things that happened in that event that are just, I believe, they were meant to happen the way that they were meant to happen. But the next morning, I was a smoker. I was a smoker since I was a teenager, diehard smoker. And we were in this building on 5th and Broad, and we knew what had happened. We knew what had happened. At one point, we were literally standing outside the building talking, like having a conversation like I'm having right now, talking. And ashes are falling on our shoulders. And we're literally continuing the conversation and just going, like, okay, survival mode. Your brain can't comprehend what is actually happening around you. It can't. So your brain just goes into this mode of, we have to just manage. We're going to manage to the moment. And we went back into the building. I went outside to smoke a cigarette. So I walked 3 blocks to smoke a cigarette, watching what's happening. And I will tell you that while I was out there, Tower 1 came down. And I literally had to run for my life from that tidal wave of smoke and ash and soot. But I'll tell you, I was paralyzed. I saw that coming toward me. I stopped. I couldn't move. We could not comprehend that it was the building coming down. We thought it was another plane. We thought another plane had come in and created this. Couldn't process it. I finally figured out, I better run. I need to run. And I turned around, and I was running for the door of 5th and Broad. And I'm telling you, I was not going to make it. There was not a chance I was going to make it to that door. And a hand from behind pushed me. And I grabbed that door and opened it, and as I was shutting it, the tidal wave just completely overcame the pitch black. Everything came pitch black. There was nobody behind me. Defining moment. I believe it was God. And I believe that it was God telling me my time wasn't done. And I had a purpose. Whatever your belief or faith is, when you believe that you have a purpose, it's amazing what you can accomplish. You can ascend that mountain. You can carry that backpack because you truly believe you have a purpose. You don't need a 9/11 to have a purpose. Every single person in this room has a purpose. You have to use it because it inspires you to make different decisions and do different things when it's most important for you to do it. So I will tell you, that's my 3rd one. My 4th one, not as big, but just as impactful. And my 4th defining moment, and there's probably 100 more, I just picked 4 to share with you today. My 4th defining moment, I will tell you, was the day that my daughter entered the workforce. She and her husband decided to come back to Louisville. They could not get anyone to look at their resume or give them an interview. It was a really hard market to break into. I will tell you, it was really hard. And my daughter called me and said, "Mom, do you think there's anything at Humana?" And I had to stop. And I had to decide whether Humana was a place I wanted my daughter to come work at. Defining moment. Do I want her to have to carry the backpack? Do I want her to have to go through what I went through to make it up that mountain? And I decided, yes, it was. And my daughter now works at Humana. So I will tell you, all those defining moments that inspired me, they were all about me. They were all about what I had to do. Now it is about you and about my daughter. Because if I only create a path for me up that mountain and I don't leave a path for you, then I didn't make a difference. So my motivation and my inspiration now is to take this backpack the rest of the way and leave a path that you can follow and not have to go through the same things that I went through to ascend that mountain. Defining moments. You have them. Figure out what they are and use them. Draw upon them. They will give you incredible inspiration and energy when you don't think you have it. Defining moments. How do we manage the backpack? It's getting heavy now. It's been on my back now for I don't know how long, but you know, there's a couple different ways that we manage the backpacks. Brute strength, I talked about that. Brute strength and perseverance. So I will share with you that I believe that I developed perseverance at different points in my career at Humana. But I'll tell you about one. My first demotion. My first demotion. I've had more than one. It is not always sunshine and roses. It doesn't always go the way you expect or believe that it absolutely should. Sometimes it doesn't. And I still remember as clearly as yesterday the phone call that I got. I had told you that I was in that East Coast region. I was in Washington, D.C. and managing that large region. My counterpart, my peer, was Judy, and she was managing Virginia. And we reported up to the vice president of sales. And I got the phone call from that vice president of sales. Marsden, we've made a decision. We're going to reorganize. Really? Really? I didn't know about that. Guess what? Those conversations take place all the time. And we're not in them. You know what's in them? The backpack. All the things that people think we are and what we're capable of and not capable of, that's what's in the conversation, not us. So think about it. So he calls me, yes, we've decided we're going to reorganize. We are going to combine your region and Judy's region, and we're going to create a big division. And we have decided to bring in someone from the outside who has proven insurance experience, has made tremendous progress. Ed, he's going to run this new division, and you and Judy are going to report to him, and Ed's going to report to me. Okay, so let's be really honest. You know what my first reaction was? Do not cry, do not cry, do not cry! Come on, how many times have you had that moment where someone just knocks you in the gut? You didn't see it coming, and the first thing you have to do is, I can't cry. Oh, that would make it even worse. That would make it worse. I'm telling you, I spoke, do not cry, do not cry, do not cry. I said, okay, all right. I went home, and I cried. I went home, and I yelled. I went home, and I screamed. I kicked. I went home and said, I'm done. They're not recognizing me after everything I did for them, and they're not going to give me that role, and I'm going to report to some guy that I don't even know. They know me, and I'm some guy you don't know. Are you kidding me? And you know what? I processed it all over the weekend. And you know what I did? I came in Monday morning, and I called my boss back. And I said, you know what? I'll take this on. I will support the decision that you made. I will make sure that Ed is the most successful divisional president in the company under one condition. And he said, what's that? And I said, I want you to tell me what was really said about me in that closed-door meeting and why I didn't get that job. And he did. And it was almost as hard as the first conversation when he told me I didn't get the job. I was perceived as a driver, but a driver for my results, not others. I didn't go out of my way to help other people. They thought I was definitely one of the guys. I worked on that for 20 years. I'm one of the guys. I was one of the guys. They didn't see me as someone who could lead the guys. You know what? It was one of the most valuable gifts anyone ever gave me was truly that authentic feedback. And as much as I didn't want to hear it, I listened and I took it. And I'll tell you, the rest of the story is a good one. I went out of my way. I created an app that allowed us to process 25% more quotes in a week. And you increase your quotes, you increase your sales counts, you increase it all. Incredible success. I asked my boss if I could come present it at the next national sales meeting so that I could give it to every other sales leader in the organization. I now called my peers on a regular basis, and we talked about our common challenges and how we could work together. I changed the way that I was perceived because I actually was given the gift of knowing how I was perceived. It gave me the chance to change it, and I did. And do you know that 18 months later, I got the phone call from my boss? If you're willing to relocate to Washington, D.C., we'd like you to be the divisional leader. And I said, what about Ed? You ready for this? He said, Ed wants to work for you and be the best sales rep in your division. And we did that for the next 2 years until Humana bought us and closed us down. But hey, but the value of that story is I was so close to walking away and saying, damn it, if you're not going to recognize me for who I'm out of here. I'm going to go find someone that will. And I didn't. And I owned it, and I embraced the fact that I was not perceived the way that I wanted to be perceived. And then I put the effort into figuring out how to change it. And it really can happen. So managing the backpack, one way, perseverance, not giving up when it gets tough, get stronger. and have the ability to hear the feedback when it's given. And I will tell you that there's the second one, which is you can't do it alone, and you really, truly can't do it alone. You know what? There are probably some incredibly successful women who have done it alone. I don't recommend it. So I believe there's value in figuring out the fact that there are Sherpas along the way, and sometimes they may not be the ones you expect. They may not be your direct manager, but I'm telling you, if you look hard enough, they're there. So I've already given you several examples where I have had mentors or Sherpas that have helped me by giving me really good, authentic feedback and what I was able to do with that. I will also tell you that I have had teams, amazing teams. And when I have had difficulty and I was having trouble carrying that backpack, they carried it for me. So surround yourself with teams and people that are willing to help you when you need it. And I'll tell you, it goes all the way back to Medavance migration, account installation, the strategic consultancy. Those successes for me were not done by me alone. I had incredible teams. And I'm telling you, every day in clinical care services, I have leaders that step up and help me. So you can't do it alone. And I will tell you, one of the most important aspects of recognizing you can't do it alone and looking for that Sherpa, sometimes you get frustrated. You are looking up that mountain and you are looking for the base camp you want to get to, and you don't see anyone that looks like you. That's hard, because that's where you look to for the path. How has someone like me done it? Because I want to go figure out how they did it, because that's how I want to do it. And you don't see them. I will tell you, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and turn around and look down at the mountain at someone who is looking to get to your spot, and go figure out how to help them. Go give them the feedback. Go give them the tools. I will tell you, twice in my career, I was so focused on helping people that were working for me get to where they needed to be. The next thing I knew, I was being considered because people thought I had a really good succession management plan. I had someone ready to take my place. So I was more available for the next opportunity that came. So if you don't see that person up above, turn around, find someone looking at you, and help them get there. It will pay you back tenfold, again and again and again. So managing the backpack with others. And then my favorite one. This is truly my favorite one. Lightening the backpack. Think about all those things we talked about that went into the backpack. All those perceptions, all the characterizations, all the stereotypes, all of those things, they're in our backpack. How do you lighten it? I have a motto, and I have used this motto multiple times in my career. And I have come to the conclusion that it is really hard, and I would even propose sometimes impossible, to change some perceptions once you have them. Think about it. You can work and work and work at changing that perception, and one slip up, and you know what? Boom! You are right back to that perception that people said you were. Right back there. One slip up, and it's over. But you know what you can do? You can change you can create new perceptions. Rather than trying to convince somebody you're not something, put your effort into convincing them that you are something. It works. I'm telling you, it actually works. And I'll give you an example. I am one of my many 360s, and I've had coaches, I've had 360s, I've had more feedback than a feedback mechanism, whatever those things are called. I've got it from every angle you could possibly imagine. So, in one of those experiences, I was basically being told that I was not perceived as a team player. I was not perceived as having a high emotional intelligence. And I was not perceived as engaging positively with other people in the organization in meetings. So I asked for examples, because that's what we always do, right? Every time we go, give me an example. because, you need the example to figure it out. So I asked for examples. And I got many examples. One of them was that I physically, when I was in a meeting and it was going in a direction that I did not like, or somebody was talking about something that I didn't agree with, I would cross my arms. And then if the meeting continued and it wasn't the way I wanted, I sat back in my chair because I'm not going to engage. I'm just not even going to play. Low emotional intelligence, not engaging. That was the feedback. Do you know what I did? For 6 months, I only worked on one thing. Not crossing my arms. And as soon as I knew I wanted to disengage, I forced myself to sit forward at the table. Every single meeting I was in, that's all I worked on. Now, keep in mind, I had a list of 20 things I was supposed to work on. It was a whole bunch of stuff. I picked that one and said, if I could just change that one, would it make a difference? Would it help? Would it make a difference? Every meeting, I began to get really good. I could tell I was starting to get disengaged. I knew my own physiological reactions. I could feel it coming on, and I'm like, you're disengaging, to cross those arms. I put those arms, I would hold them on the side of that chair. You are not crossing those arms. And I could feel myself wanting to push back, going, no, I can't believe they're talking about this again. And I would force myself to lean forward. And do you know what happened? It was amazing. What was amazing? I actually started to listen to what was being discussed. Rather than sitting back going, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing it. I was sitting forward. I began to listen. I began to actually hear that although I was frustrated by the way they were talking about it, or there was an aspect, there were really good things I was missing because I was disengaging. A year later, there was no mention, not one mention, that I disengaged, that I had low emotional intelligence. Do you know what the 360 said? Open to other people's opinions, engaging, team player, looks for the greater good of the team. I didn't convince them that I didn't disengage or got mad. I didn't try to change the perception. Do you know what I did? I gave them a new one. I created a new perception. You can do that. When you do that, you lighten the backpack. You take those negative perceptions out. And you replace it with positive ones that become your tools that help you climb that mountain. So, managing the backpack. It is one of the most important things that we could do. I will challenge you that if every one of us left here today, okay, let's not say everyone, let's say 10. Set the bar low. 10 of us, 10 people walked out of this discussion and focused on taking one thing out of their backpack or helping someone else take one thing out of their backpack, we would move the needle on women in leadership in Humana in a way that we have not done before. So I will tell you that although these are my stories, and this truly is only my story, and you have no idea how many things I missed, no clue. So I'm reading my notes going, okay, I did okay. My story. You know what? Every one of you has a story. Every one of you has a story. Every one of you has a backpack. You have things you put in it. You have things you let other people put in it. You manage it differently. You figure out what those things are that truly inspire you to keep coming back at it and do it again and again and again. And I'll tell you that journey about making it better and leaving a path and allowing other people to ascend that mountain in a new way. I've taken side steps when I needed to because the way in front of me was just too sheer and there was no way I was going to make it. I've taken steps back in order to get to a different part of the mountain. All of those things are part of what it takes. But wouldn't it be great if it didn't require all of that? Wouldn't it be great if we were acknowledged for what it was we did, who we were, and what we could bring to the table? And we do that by taking those things out of the backpack and lightening it up. And my goal is, my journey's not over, but my journey really is much more about leaving a path for my daughter, leaving a path for others to follow. But I will tell you that I believe that if we all did this together, maybe, just maybe, my granddaughter or your granddaughter would only need a clutch purse to make it up Mount Humana. So I challenge you, every one of you, to spend some time and know what's in your backpack. Know what defines you and inspires you to go at it, and figure out how you're going to get stronger and persevere with it, figure out how you're going to leverage others, and figure out how you're going to lighten the load. That's it.